I now have the great honor of introducing someone I've admired for a very long time, and that is Chef Rick Bayless. This is not an easy task. How do you introduce one of the most well-known chefs in the United States? He has written numerous cookbooks, and his book Mexican Kitchen won the International Academy of Culinary Professional Cookbook of the Year Award, and his fourth book, Mexico One Plate at a Time, won the James Beard Foundation Best International Cookbook of the Year Award. Rick's restaurants include Frontera Grill and many others that are serving authentic Mexican food, and his Tortas Frontera restaurant at O'Hare Airport is serving eaters from all around the globe. Rick and his staff established the Frontera Farmer Foundation in 2003 to support small Midwestern farms. Each year, grants are awarded to farmers for improvements to their family farms, encouraging greater production and profitability. The foundation has to date awarded 128 grants, totaling more than $1.3 million. He's also launched the Frontera Scholarship, a full tuition scholarship that sends a Mexican-American Chicago public school student to Kendall College to study the culinary arts. I'm so honored that he could be here today. He's got a very busy schedule. Please join me in welcoming him to the stage.
Well, it's very interesting that I'm talking right after a comment about being positive, because that's kind of what my whole life has been about. And I got super discouraged over the last year or so with all of the election stuff, and it was so much about negative stuff and never about people who are living the change they want to see in the world. I saw virtually nothing about that, and yet there are people everywhere doing it. And I don't think that if you holler negative things at people, they're going to change their ways. I think the way that people are inspired to change their ways is when they see it working for somebody else. So I will just briefly go through a bit of my history. I come from a restaurant family. I'd always been really interested in food and restaurants, but took a detour and fell in love with Mexico and its culture, and ended up living there with the idea that I was going to express how Mexico and its culture is reflected in its food. And the thing that I learned in the 5 years that I was working on my first book and living in Mexico was that wherever I went, that there was really great food, there was also great local agriculture. And then I decided I could make the biggest impact, not by living in Mexico and perhaps opening a restaurant there, but instead by coming back to the United States, because I kept being struck over and over and over again with the fact that we have this stuff that we call Mexican food in the United States, and it doesn't relate to anything that people are eating in Mexico. And I thought, as sort of my contribution to helping my compatriots here in the United States understand a bit about the culture and the cuisine of Mexico, our next door neighbor, that I would open up a restaurant that served that kind of food here in the United States. But I was stuck because I wanted to do a really great restaurant in a town where I could find no local agriculture. Now, this is 30 years ago. Frontera Grill will be 30 years old in March. And I knew I had a lot cut out for me. And the very first year we opened in March, I knew that the local strawberries were going to be available in May. At the end of May, they usually come out. So I went down to our international produce terminal and I asked all of the houses down there, who's going to carry the local strawberries? And I just got laughed out of there. In spite of the fact that we have some of the most delicious strawberries on the planet in this area, nobody at the produce terminal would carry them because they said they were too small and too fragile. They only wanted the great big Driscoll-type strawberries that have the white hollow center from California that taste only vaguely of strawberry. So I thought, oh, this is going to be super hard. So my wife and I took all of the desserts off the menu, and we only did strawberry desserts, and we drove outside of town to a farm stand in southwestern Michigan, and we bought the strawberries twice a week, and we'd come back with them and make all these strawberry desserts because that was the best food that I could offer to my guests. And I knew that if we were going to really develop a great restaurant culture and that our restaurant was going to stand out from the others, we were going to have to do it based on that. So we didn't have the words farm to table back then. We didn't have the words sustainability, really. We didn't have the word transparency. And yet what we were doing was living it all. We didn't really have to have a label for it because we knew that it would read in the taste of the food that we were putting out, that we were doing something that was different. We found a farm to work with, a small farm, just a southern part of Chicago. And we worked with them for a year, and it was really tiny, and it was kind of, I felt that was like we were doing window dressing on our menu. We were buying all this commodity produce, and then we were sort of decorating it up with some local stuff, but that was all we had to work with, really. And she went out of business, and then she said it was just too hard. There was just no way she could get enough volume going. And then we found another one, and there was a guy who had retired, and he wanted to do this again. He could give us some few things to window dress our menu with, but at least we felt like we were making a step in the right direction. And all this went over, and they go out of business after a year or two, and we were just like desperate for some kind of local produce that we could really put on our menu. And finally we realized that what was lacking here was infrastructure. And so we had been working with a small farm that was just across the Wisconsin border, and he brought us this spinach, and it was in the middle of the winter, and we said, oh my God, this is the best spinach we've ever eaten in our life. We want it all, and we want you to grow a lot more of it. And he goes, oh, I couldn't possibly do that because I need another hoop house. If I'm going to do that, I have to plant it all in November, but then I can harvest it through the winter months. So I said, well, what if we bought the hoop house for you, and then you paid us back for the hoop house in spinach, because that's the trade that we can do. Then we're better off, and he's better off, and then he can continue to produce. And that was the seed for starting, for us to be able to really fully live the change we wanted to see in the Chicago world of local agriculture. Many things have happened in Chicago since then, but we are really proud to say that we have been involved in planting seeds everywhere. And through all, we eventually took this, it was a no-interest loan program, and we've turned it into a not-for-profit 501c3 organization that gives grants to the small family farms in the Midwest. We have seen so much. The figures that you just heard about that are actually probably a year or two old, but we're up to $2 million worth of grants now, and a whole host of farms that have been touched by the Frontera Farmer Foundation. And what we have found, and let me tell you, this organization is not really an organization. It's all volunteer from people at our restaurant. We raise all the money on one day at our restaurant. Literally, we do one day. We have this huge event at our restaurant, and we raise all the money we're going to give away for the next year. And we have nobody that administers the thing except for a few people who volunteer their time while they're at the restaurant working. And it's like one of those things that's a perfect balance of things, because it's easy for us to raise the money. It affects so many people's lives. But the thing that we discovered, which in this world of big numbers that you hear from the economists constantly, is that these family farms need $10,000. Okay? Now, it takes, by most people's estimate, a small Midwestern family farm would have to scrimp and save for 5 years to save up $10,000 to invest in their farm. And by giving them a grant for $10,000, $8,000, $12,000 for a particular project, we are literally pushing them ahead 5 years in the development of their farm. And they need such simple things: a delivery vehicle, a watering system, a hoop house, a new tractor, whatever it might be. And all of these things that they apply for with such passion. And my goal was simply to keep these people on the farm, so that those first years that we saw all these small family farms just going out of business because it was just too hard to make a living, and you could make a whole lot more working at the local hospital in a basic job than they could make on the farms. That if we could just help to invest $10,000 here, $8,000, $12,000, whatever it might be, that we could keep them on the farm, and we could create a really viable local agricultural economy. And by doing that, we could enhance the quality of life for everybody here. And that's what we really wanted to do. Because when people taste fresh, seasonal, local, sustainably raised produce, they are happier. And you can never underestimate the power of great food. It affects people in a way that they can rarely articulate, but it always is something that is lasting in them. And that's all we have tried to do for all of these years, was to be transparent, let everybody know where our food comes from, work with sustainable practices in all the farms that we buy from, and of course be farm to table, though we didn't know that's what it was supposed to be called until many years later. So that's my story. I hope that it will encourage some of you and be thought-provoking to some of you. Thank you all for your attention.